Religion touches the lives of most everyone in a society, whether in our own society or others around the world. Even for those of us who say that they're not religious, don't attend services, do not associate with any organized religion, who say they do not believe in God or think of themselves as agnostics, the mainstream religions of their society still have a great bearing on the laws that develop in that society. The two develop hand in hand. What is legal is also not sinful, and they support each other in the functioning of that society. And so it's worth the time to look a bit about the religious influences in the lives of the clients that you are going to serve. First, another little mini lesson from our introductory sociology textbooks about the functions that religions play in a society. There are 4 primary functions that are key to the functioning of any society. Religion promotes social solidarity. Think about the phrase, "one nation under God," in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, or look on your currency and see where it says, "In God we trust." The shared values of a religion create a sense of unity, common identity, and a linkage extending even outside the group of those persons who meet on a face-to-face basis. Secondly, religions consecrate crises. September 2001, a few days after those events, George Bush declared war from the pulpit of a national cathedral in a nationwide address. Oftentimes, such services occur in a religious institution because religions help members of a society to deal with the threats and hardship that they have to face and sometimes provides answers to difficult questions. Religions often offer comfort and solace as well. It gives life meaning beyond the immediate problems and enables individuals to function effectively in the face of danger, helping them to adjust to the problems of everyday life. First of all, think about when natural disasters occur. Oftentimes you'll see news reports from individuals who have gathered in churches, perhaps for the first time in a long time, to pray to God for support. This is a good example of that. Furthermore, religion is often used to help us get through tough times with the assurance that if we have a tough time in our lives here on earth, we'll be rewarded in the afterlife. Finally, religions reinforce the moral order. As I suggested in my opening comments, what is illegal in a society is also sinful in most mainstream churches in that society. Behavioral norms become moral imperatives. On occasion, religions can also spearhead change, but oftentimes, perhaps more often, religion tends to support the status quo and stabilizes society. Sociologists do see other roles of religion, as suggested here, provides those in power with a tool of social control, and also supports the status quo and reinforces the inequalities in a society in the process of doing so. Counsel in social work education requires that spirituality be addressed along with other types of diversity in social work education. The definitions of spirituality and religiosity are really quite different, and when we talk about spirituality and addressing it in our practice, we're generally not so much talking about formalized religions as we're talking about spiritual and religious beliefs and how they impact our clients' lives. But it is necessary to understand the meaning of religion in the life of the client in order to understand the whole client and to understand the worldview that they have. It's critical to explore the experiences that they've encountered as a member of a minority as a result of their religion and their beliefs. And it's vital to learn if the client's religious faith is important to them at all and learn how it's woven into their value and belief system. In doing so, we should be prepared to understand that the client might not feel comfortable with the professional that's working with them based upon the history that that client has had as a member of a religious minority. It's important that we understand our own religious beliefs and values and the attitudes that we hold towards the notion of religion, and that we recognize our prejudices and feelings towards others' religions as well, and even our own religion for that matter, and how those thoughts and prejudices and feelings might combine to impact our work with other people. Issues such as abortion, sexual orientation, and sexual behaviors are the first to come to mind when I think about how it is that religious beliefs may influence our approach to working with others. Oppression and bigotry regarding religion has left its mark on many persons in our culture, and this is another type of adversity that our clients experience. Religious oppression is often ignored, overlooked, or only addressed superficially and isn't fully incorporated into our assessment of clients. There are some very useful tools that you'll pick up along the way regarding spiritual assessments, and a discussion about religion and its role in clients' lives, as mentioned earlier, is something that's very useful for you to have. Religion serves to create a system of common understanding among its people that serves to bond them together and prescribe the manner in which they interact with the larger society. It defines how people are expected to treat each other, how to live their lives on a daily basis, and how they are to fill their roles in the family, the community, and the larger society. Sometimes these definitions can be very helpful for the client in navigating their way through life. Sometimes these definitions can be very confining and can make life very difficult for clients as well. Religion helps to motivate persons to follow customs and rules that are inherent in the society in which they live. It provides a buffer against being marginalized and a sense of togetherness, unity, and acceptance, and offers what is referred to here as compensators, that is, rewards in the afterlife. Conflict theorists would tell you, Karl Marx would suggest to you, when he referred to religion as the opiate of the masses, that this tendency to offer compensators is a way to preserve the status quo and to keep marginalized populations quiet, promising a reward later in life for living a good life here on earth. Finally, religion establishes a sense of belonging and an identity that is based in large part on religious identification. Children are very deeply impacted by their family's view of the world, and religion is a part of that view. It is important to keep in mind the collective history of the client's group and the historical experiences of that group, both as a religious group and as a member of society. The experiences that family members have had with members of other religious groups over the years also has a way of affecting the family's view of the world. Every culture, every religious group has its own set of values and practices that reflect the beliefs of the group, and these influence how the individual performs social roles. So if you run into a situation where social role performance of a client is out of the norm, it might be worthwhile to consider the client's culture and religion and how they factor into this. Such factors as the roles of women, their views of children, manners of dress, and views of public requirements such as education, marital laws, and so on. Historically speaking, persons in religious minorities have been excluded from institutions and systems, and they've learned that the environment doesn't always welcome them into joining the majority. Our history in the United States is full of such examples. Native American and Alaska Native religions were seen as savage and heathen as Christian missionaries established churches and boarding schools in the expansion to the West to Christianize those peoples. The phrase, "kill the Indian, save the man," reflected some of the attitudes of the Christian missionaries that interacted with Native Americans and Alaska Natives in the early days. In the 1850s and beyond, there was an American political party called the American Party, which was more informally known as the Know Nothing Party. The Know Nothing Party was an outgrowth of the strong anti-immigrant and anti-Roman Catholic sentiment that started to manifest itself during the 1840s. They even ran a former president, Millard Fillmore, for another term as a member of their party, although he was not elected. In case you're wondering, the Know Nothing Party got its name because of the fact that the party itself kept its presence rather secret outside of their running a member of the party for president 1 or 2 years. And so members were instructed to say they knew nothing when asked about the party. I guess they weren't very proud of themselves. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first time a whole people was excluded from the United States. And in the prejudiced language of that day, the Chinese were Buddhists, Confucianists, Taoists, and were thought of as pagans and heathens from the evangelical point of view. This was cited as one of the reasons why they needed to be kept out of the country. The KKK reappeared on the national stage in the early 1920s and agitated against racial minorities, immigrants, Catholics, and Jews. The Klan infiltrated the Democratic Party and in the state of Indiana actually took over the party and won the whole state. In the 1930s, when it might have mattered if the U.S. government had done something, the U.S. government instead excluded Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany from coming to America. Racists of the time argued that German Jews shouldn't be admitted because Nazi agents might covertly exist among them. Since September 11, 2001, Muslims have been singled out for suspicion and retribution in the United States. Our president has incorrectly and repeatedly claimed to have seen thousands and thousands of people cheering the September 11th terrorist attacks in an area of New Jersey with a large Arab community, and later called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. The Trump administration's travel ban, approved by the U.S. Supreme Court, primarily focuses on those arriving from nations with large Muslim populations. Incidents of vandalism and violent assaults at Jewish synagogues and Islamic mosques have spiked significantly since this president's election. Oppressed minorities have used religion to assist in coping with discrimination. For instance, Michelle Lamont mentions in an article, Euphemized Racism, about how important religion was for African Americans throughout history. Blacks use religion to demonstrate that we all share something fundamental, thus rebutting racist ideologies. Historically, black churches helped to sustain communities against the ravages of slavery, Jim Crow, poverty, and racial violence that contoured African American life throughout this period. Oftentimes, the churches have offered the only place of lawful assembly for blacks in our history, thus the few opportunities for community development and collaboration. This is, of course, a very effective way to manage the power of assembly for blacks and to maintain the status quo. But the importance of religion in the history of African Americans is one reason why the church burnings that have occurred from time to time throughout the South, even recently, and the mass shooting at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, are particularly significant. Black churches, specifically AME and Baptist, give spiritual, religious, and material sustenance to African American communities during and after slavery. The church drew from African folklore and religions and Christianity to develop a unique blending of a sectarian and secular belief system that allowed black people to survive slavery and its aftermath. The black church's radical humanism harbored a fierce resistance to slavery, a love of freedom, and a thirst for citizenship and equality that made it a hotbed of internal debates, discussions, and controversies over the best course for black liberation in America. This is from a website with an article, Why the Black Church Has Always Mattered. Many different religions in the United States have a lot of different ethnic roots, and this needs to be understood in the meanings, values, and standards of the culture from which they come. Religious teachings help members identify how to cope in many areas of life, including such things as identified here: marriage, sex, health, children, food and diet, death and burial, mental health and mental illness, and so on. These beliefs and practices may differ significantly from those with which we are familiar, and it's important in our work that we understand those differences. It's important that we avoid judging customs of those cultures based on our own culture as a norm, keeping in mind that the lens through which we view others always has its roots in our own upbringing, our own values, and our own core culture. Even those of us who have very carefully studied diversity and are committed to supporting other ways of life and other views of the world, nonetheless, we must be careful to be aware that our own upbringing will impact our interpretation of things around us. As I say here, in all areas of diversity, the social worker must approach clients with an open, accepting mind, the attitude of a learner. How our national systems interact with persons from religious minorities, both recently and historically, has shaped the person that we come in contact with into who they are today and how they respond to the systems and individuals with whom they interact. This may mean the social worker. While identifying and supporting the practices of persons from marginalized religious groups, we must be able to encourage clients to share their stories with us. This will convey the experiences of the client's life as well as the personal meaning of those experiences. It will give us an opportunity to learn about the discrimination that the clients themselves have experienced because of their religion, because this does help to shape their worldview. Keep in mind that the memories of prejudice and oppression experienced by previous generations in the client's life and how those stories have been passed down from older generations will impact their view today. So this short talk on religion may have some useful concepts for you to consider in your work and development in the areas of diversity, and I hope you'll let me know if any questions arise from this talk. Thank you.